Sanitary District, this regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. Before starting the meeting, I ask that if anyone has a cell phone or pager, they turn it to silent or to vibrate, as not to disrupt the meeting while the meeting is in progress. And if you do receive a call or page during the meeting, we ask that you step into the hallway, again, as to not disrupt the meeting. We'll start this meeting as we do with every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you stand with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda is roll call. Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Trammell Rex.
Present.
Commissioner Maurice Mabon.
Present.
Commissioner Ola Morris.
Present.
Commissioner Charles Jackson.
Present.
Attorney Tony Walker.
Present.
Executive Director Daniel Vakari.
Present.
Director of Administration Vern White.
Present.
And that's the end of roll call.
All right, with 4 commissioners present, we do have a quorum to do business. Next on the agenda is certification. I, Trammell Rags, certify that prior to this meeting, an executive session was held, and there was nothing that was discussed during that executive session except the items that were noticed on the executive session notice posted in compliance with Indiana Code 5-14-1.5. Also, there were no final decisions made during that executive session in compliance with the same statute. If there is any commissioner that dissents this certification, they may do so now. Hearing none, we'll move along the agenda to the minutes. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that the minutes of the executive session and regular meeting for February 3rd, 2020 be approved.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Mabon.
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, the minutes have been approved. Moving along the agenda, next we come to new business. And for new business, I will turn it over to the Executive Director, Mr. Daniel Vakari.
Chairman, I'd like to ask for Vern White to present to you item 2A and B.
Thank you, Director. Item 2A, a motion to approve GSD's payroll earnings for period ending January 6, 2020 through January 19, 2020, in the amount of $240,388.77. I recommend approval as stated in the motion.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2A. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval as stated in the motion, Mr. Chair. I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Mabon.
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2A has been approved.
Item 2B, a motion to approve GSD resolution number SD 20-07, authorizing repayment of a temporary interfund loan from GSD Debt Service Reserve Fund 373 to GSD Equipment Replacement Fund 435 regarding GSD Series 2020 Revenue Refunding Bond closing costs. During the February 3rd, 2020 board meeting, funds were approved and ratified on an emergency basis, transferring funds from GSD Equipment Replacement Fund 435 to help cover the GSD 2020 Series Bond closing costs in the amount of $3,133,889.40. A temporary interfund loan was established for the funds to be repaid back to GSD Equipment Replacement Fund 435 from GSD Debt Service Reserve Fund 373 within 30 days. We are now requesting approval for repayment of those funds. I recommend approval for the repayment of the temporary interfund loan back to GSD Equipment Replacement Fund 435 from GSD Debt Service Reserve Fund 373 in the amount of $3,133,889.40. I recommend approval as stated in the motion for 2B.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2B. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval as stated in the motion, Mr. Chair. Second it, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Mabon.
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2B has been approved.
Item 2C is a motion to approve and ratify an award of bid to Alex Met Sewers, Inc. for an emergency sanitary sewer repair and manhole replacement at 9229 East 6th Avenue in a not-to-exceed amount of $30,100.00. This was deemed an emergency because of vehicular and pedestrian hazards as the sewer had lost its structural integrity. So we solicited quotes from, pardon me, I didn't have that number handy, 16 contractors in this case. We had 3 respond in this emergency, with Alex Met Sewer being the lowest responsive bidder. This will entail the replacement of the manhole and roughly 28 feet of pipe, replacing it with PVC pipe going west, south, and east of that manhole. We recommend approval of item 2C.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2C. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, before the board entertains a vote, may I bring up an issue regarding this matter?
Sure.
I just noticed in a report that we were given today that Alex Metz is being shown as non-compliant. Is our compliance officer available, and can she speak to his non-compliance?
Good morning, Commissioners. As noted by the attorney, Alex Met Sewers has been consistently in noncompliance with meeting our policy of hiring Gary residents. They have received noncompliance notices repeatedly from our office, and all of that has been noted.
And so when I see him appear on this list for non-compliant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times. What are those? Are those 15 different projects, or what are you presenting here?
Sure. So later on in the meeting on the agenda, I actually give a more overview of compliance. However, given your question now, what we tend to do is review the projects that we are monitoring and give an update as to either the job site visits, the review of certified payrolls, and how they are complying overall with our policy 2113. So this represents the projects that Alex Met Sewers has with the Gary Sanitary District that our compliance office is monitoring.
And are we to understand that this non-compliance is all based on local hiring?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With that said, you've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2C. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval, Mr. Chair. Item 2C.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion?
I'm pretty sure, obviously, there's going to be some discussions. We'll probably table it after. I guess my concern is that when I do look at the list, is there a period of time in which a contractor has to become compliant during the process, or do you go back and you evaluate them after the work has been completed? I mean, I'm pretty sure you have monitors out there. You audit the payroll.
Well, let me speak to the emergency repairs.
Okay.
So the emergency repairs are done basically by the technical engineering department, calling for quotes. Our compliance department is not involved in that process. Generally, we hear about it after it has been awarded. We are having some communications and trying to make sure that we're on the front end of those, but traditionally we are on the back end. So we request the certified payrolls from the contractors when we can. We conduct job site visits. With the addition of 2 additional persons, we are able to be more consistent out there conducting job site visits. But with some of these emergency repairs, they're in, they're out, and they're done. So when it comes to larger projects where we are involved at the time of the pre-bid and we're able to be involved throughout the project, that's a little different. But when it comes to the emergency sewer repairs, they're emergencies and, we just have to go with what we have. Now, what I will tell you is that we came up with a memo that the engineering department utilizes in their request for quotes, where we outline what the requirements are for subcontracting as well as hiring, and that is to be signed by those contractors that are responding. They either agree to meet our requirements or they do not agree. And language within that memo stipulates that if they do not agree, that they could be deemed non-responsive and non-responsible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Maybach.
Yes.
Commissioner Rex.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2C has been approved.
Item 2D is a motion to approve an award of bid to Mechanical Concepts, Inc. for the GSD boiler replacement project, and that is GSD project SD 19-03, in a not-to-exceed amount of $525,000.00. This is for, as it says, a replacement of our boilers. The boilers are used for heating our digesters, which destruct the volatile concentration of our sludge. And it reduces the total mass of sludge that ultimately we have to dispose of the plant and pay by the ton to dispose at a landfill. The boilers were put in probably, I forgot the exact year, but in the 70s, I believe. And these boilers also have reached the end of their useful life. So we had retained CDM Smith to come up with project designs, plans and specifications to bid. We bid them last month, and we received 3 bids with Mechanical Concepts, Inc., Gary-based business, has the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. So we recommend award to Mechanical Concepts for this project for item 2D.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2D. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Maybach.
Yes.
Commissioner Rex.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2D has been approved.
Item 2E, related to item 2D, this is a motion to approve task order number 36 to the master services agreement between the Gary Sanitary District and CDM Smith, Inc. for construction services for the boiler replacement project, and that is, again, project SD 19-03. This is for CDM Smith as the engineer of record to provide for construction engineering services. They will be here to generally administer the construction contract, make sure that project controls are in place. They will review submittals by the contractor. They will respond to RFIs from the contractor, all the typical things that are done during our major construction projects. They will, in a sense, be our project representative throughout the construction. They have requested task order number 36 to be in the amount of $102,800, which is commensurate with industry standards for projects of this nature and complexity. So I recommend approval of item 2E.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2E. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion?
How many boilers are we talking about at the present time?
3,
3.
removing 3 and replacing them with 3. But
Do
they're
you have them in
3.
service now?
They are in service. There is definitely 1 in service. Rhonda, sometimes we have 2 depending on availability of parts and the need for repair, but we are getting by. We're okay right now. But the schedule we've laid out is because we need to replace them. They're on their last legs. Typically with something like this is what you do. You run these until you can't run them any longer, then you replace them. At a previous meeting, the board had approved the pre-purchase. The reason we did that is we wanted contractors to know this is the boiler we have and this is what you're bidding on. don't provide me with apples and oranges that are hard to compare as far as the type of boiler. So something to add too is that this is funded from our equipment replacement fund, but more importantly, this project is eligible for a rebate from NIPSCO. And I believe the rebate in this case was somewhere in the order of $60,000, $69,000 that NIPSCO, once these boilers are installed, will write us a check in a form of an energy conservation rebate to the sanitary district. It's a program with our current rate structure that we do pay into, and the whole idea is that you get it back eventually by implementing energy conservation projects.
Is this a flat fee from CDM to?
No, it's a billing rate. Everything under the master service agreement, as with all of our engineers, is a billing rate contract with an upper limit not to exceed. So at this time, this is our best estimate. It depends on how the construction goes. If the contractor every day has a million questions, well, first of all, that'll be a problem they shouldn't have. But if there are a few questions and a few problems, they will be under this amount. If there are many, we'll keep them held to this amount.
So how do we come to a flat fee, but not to exceed?
They enumerate the different tasks, if you see in their scope of work on page 1. Tasks 1 through 16 are all the different things that they know they'll have to oversee or accomplish, and they develop a cost estimate based on the billing rates of the individuals that will be on the project, which those billing rates are in the master services agreement, and they come up with a cost build-up estimate.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have, Chairman.
With no other discussion, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Maybon,
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2E has been approved.
Item 2F is a motion to approve task order number 31 to the master services agreement between the Gary Sanitary District and American Structure Point, Inc. for the Horace Mann Neighborhood Sewer Rehabilitation Project. So on this project, American Structure Point was our design engineer and then subsequently our construction engineer. Since that time, the board has awarded the task order awarding them an upper limit not to exceed billing rate task order for the construction services. The Corps of Engineers have come up with an additional $300,000 to fund further sewer lining in this area. So American Structure Point is requesting an additional $25,000.00 to provide for the construction engineering commensurate with that additional funding that the Corps found for additional construction. So I recommend approval of item 2F.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2F. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Maybon,
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2F has been approved.
Item 2G is a motion to approve an agreement for electrical services between the Gary Sanitary District and Northern Indiana Public Service Company, LLC, AKA NIPSCO. Obviously, NIPSCO is our electrical and gas provider, but in this case, for the electric rate we are currently in is called rate 732. There had been a rate case where they were approved for basically additional tariffs in that rate, 732. We, as a sanitary district, are grandfathered into the current rates that we pay. So they want to move us from 732, so we're not subject to those additional tariffs, to a rate they're calling 833. We've had conversations with NIPSCO. They indicate this will keep our rates the same as they have always been. But I told them I need our attorney to be able to review this contract. And based on his recommendation and ultimate negotiations on the final form of agreement, I'm asking the board to approve in its sense that we are maintaining the same rates, whatever they call the rate code or whatever. We want to make sure that we're grandfathered in and that the language in this contract protects us from additional liabilities. So my recommendation is to have the board authorize myself and the attorney to meet with NIPSCO and negotiate a final form of agreement and have it executed by the board.
So as I understand it, from the executive director, he's seeking a motion for approval of 2G subject to final form.
Correct.
What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Well, second, Mr. Chair.
Did you have to get the approval from the attorney?
No.
Said if you will work on it?
We're going to meet with NIPSCO and go over the rate 832 they're trying to move us into, just to make sure we understand all the particulars.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Any further discussion, I should say? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Maybon.
Yes.
And Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2G has been approved.
And that's all for new business today.
Thank you. Moving along our agenda, next we come to claims, and for claims, I'll turn it over to the Director of Administration, Ms. Vern White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 3A, GSD claims numbers 504 through 656 in the amount of $1,011,240.38. I recommend approval and ratification of today's GSD claims.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 3A for approval and ratification. What is the pleasure of the board?
So moved for approval and ratification.
We'll second that, Mr.
3A,
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yes.
Commissioner Maybon.
Yes.
Commissioner Rags.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 3A has been approved.
That completes today's GSD claims items.
Thank you. Moving along our agenda, next we come to information updates. The first information update will come from our plant superintendent, Ms. Rhonda Anderson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On January the 31st, we had our monthly process control improvement strategies call with CDM Smith. We've been having these calls for the past 2.5 years, and during that time, we have evaluated monthly data and established correlations between certain events. And so because we've had these discussions, we're doing a better job on making return-activated sludge adjustments, maintaining stable solids retention time. We're doing continuous wasting versus batch wasting that we used to do. And our data has improved. And all this is important because these things have allowed us to switch from chemical phosphorus removal to biological phosphorus removal. So we're going to continue having these calls, and some of the topics that we are looking to improve on is dewatered sludge. We're working on getting drier cake, and we'll be talking more about that. We're also looking to automate our disinfection process so we can save on chemicals for disinfection. The February Northwest Indiana Operators Association meeting will be hosted by GSD at noon on February 27th, and the technical presentation will be an overview of sludge thickening and dewatering technologies. On the aeration improvement project, Thielmans has removed blowers 4 and 5 and associated motors, piping, starters, controls, and conduit. And you can hear in the background the noise outside. They are doing hydro excavation as we speak, and they're on schedule. On the boiler replacement project, I would just like to add that not only are we improving our reliability by having new boilers versus the ones that are at the end of their useful life, but the new boilers will be more energy efficient, and we should see a savings in our gas expenses once they are installed. I don't have anything new to add on the grid system improvement project. We're just waiting on 100% design on that, and we'll move forward after that. The maintenance department has been busy. Level sensor in the pressate well was replaced. Outside lights on a truck garage were replaced. The number 5 CPEX pump, which is the pump that removes dewatered or thickened sludge from the GBT to the blend tank, has been rebuilt. belt filter number 2, belt filter press number 2, belts were replaced. Intermediate tank number 6 was cleaned and the rake arm was repaired. And all the raw sewage pumps have been painted, which helps with corrosion inhibition. We're still looking to fill operator vacancies, and certified operators or degree candidates are preferred because we do have a requirement that all of our operators pass the Class 4 certification exam. And finally, NIPSCO hand-delivered our incentive check for the lighting replacement project in the amount of $11,483. And we, in addition to that, we are expected to save, because we've replaced the lighting fixtures, approximately $12,000 a year on electric costs. So that's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the board for the plant superintendent?
On the boiler replacements, are we looking at getting any rebates on that?
Yes, about $69,000.
The dewatering building, the trough that you brought up last meeting, they started on replacing it?
No, we haven't. We created the PO, and I forget what the lead time is, but it'll be a while before we receive that.
There's no answer.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Our next information update will be in reference to construction activities, and that will come from Mr. Eric Tonk.
Good morning, Board. Good morning. Here to provide a brief update on current construction projects. The first one is the Clark Road improvements. Still waiting for NIPSCO to lower their gas valve in order for that one section of sidewalk to be poured in. Hopefully that'll be good, being done soon, so when concrete season starts, we can get that out of the way. The Lake Street Road construction project. We're asking for a schedule for this project. This is for on Lake Street between Miller Avenue and 7th Avenue. So we're working with Gary Material Supplies and give us a schedule since the construction season is quickly approaching on us. The aeration system improvements project, I believe Rhonda covered everything. The blowers 4 and 5 have been disassembled and demolished. They are doing some hydro excavating, potholing to see the condition of the blower pipe, so when they connect the temporary blowers, make sure they have a good pipe to connect to. The Atchison Street drainage project, the materials is there on site. However, METS was pulled away from that project for this emergency project on 6th Avenue. That project was to be completed today on 6th Avenue, minus the restoration for that cave-in. And the last one I have is the Horace Mann area sewer rehabilitation project. Grimmer's mobilized this week. They are in between McKinley and Roosevelt Street and 6th and 7th Avenues in that alleyway. They are starting to set dewatering points and probably start excavation and manhole-to-manhole sewer replacement in that area this week. And they'll probably take them a full week to get that done. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Tonk in reference to construction activities? Thank you, Mr. Tonk.
Thank you.
Our next information update will be from compliance, and that will come from Ms. Tammy Davis.
Good morning, Commissioners. You do have my full detailed analysis report in front of you. And before I go into that, just want to give a highlight of our how to do business with the Small Business Administration. It was a workshop that we provided on the 13th. And despite the weather, we had about 45 individual businesses that had confirmed, and we had about 34, 35 that actually showed up. So we were very pleased with the turnout. The presentation was being done by the Small Business Administration's Business Opportunities Specialist, Vernice Mathis out of Indianapolis. And we also had Regina Blair, who is the Chief of the Contracting Division from the Army Corps of Engineers out of their Chicago district, as well as DeWillican Middleton, who is the Small Business Program Manager with the U.S. Department of Energy. So those in attendance were able to get a lot of information relative to becoming 8A certified, learning about hub zone, opportunity zones, so that our local minority and diverse businesses could take advantage of our partnership that we have not only with the Army Corps, but with other projects that will be going around in the region as well. So we're very pleased with that. And in addition, we also brought in representatives from BMO Harris Bank, who is an SBA-approved local banking institution, to speak with businesses about their financial fiscability in order to be able to compete for these projects in terms of getting capital for either equipment and so forth to grow and develop their business. So we are very pleased with the outcome of that workshop, and we have one coming up with the Indiana Department of Administration in their Division of Supplier Diversity to assist businesses with getting minority, woman-owned, and veteran-owned business certified. So when it comes to the report that you have in front of you, I'll just highlight what this report actually represents. So the first cover sheet provides, and that's the one that says compliance status of GSD 2020 projects. So we name the projects that our particular office is involved with monitoring. With some of them, we do not have the actual end dates, and so we note it as being active. And if we do not have the final documents, such as their certified payrolls, we still consider it active in compliance because we would not have all of the information that we are required to do our data analysis. So until that we receive the final closeout of our compliance-related documents, we still consider it active, whether the project has reached substantial completion, whether they've been paid retainage or not. We still consider it active until we have closed out the compliance-related documents. On the second page, where it notes the compliance status of sewer cave-ins, we mark those differently, again, because they are emergency repairs, and that is not something that we are on the front end of, which is one of the reasons why we had drafted that memo, so that whenever there are emergency repairs, that memo would be attached to the request for quotes. And that becomes attached to the ultimate notice to proceed and purchase order that is generated for that particular project. When we note that a project is non-compliant when it comes to compliance status, that means that they're not compliant with hiring Gary residents and or with submitting the required documentation. When we find that contractors are not in compliance, we issue notices of non-compliance. We call the contractor, the project manager. Sometimes we go all the way up to the top of the president or the owner of the company. We notify the board, executive staff, as well as the contractor that the contractors are in non-compliance. And so we continue to do so until the project is closed out. And I'll just stop there unless you have any other questions. When we note that there are payrolls on file, that means that they've submitted documentation and that they are currently under review. What we've also provided is a breakout per project, per contractor, so that you as a board and the executive staff and other leadership can see on a per contractor basis at all tiers where the contractor falls in terms of utilizing local residency. So for example, let's look at the first project, which is the Buffington Harbor project. You see here that the prime contractor is Dunnett Bay. We list all the trades that they are utilizing, meaning that this is work that they are self-performing, the number of workers, individual workers that they have on site. We identify the number of Gary workers that they have, and then we provide the percentages. And of course, as highlighted, we highlight the number of Gary workers by percentage versus the percentage of non-Gary workers. And we do this at all tiers because that's how you really see where your compliance is being met or how it is not being met. What it also tells us are those trades that are more likely to have local representation than others. And then lastly, what we utilize or extract from the certified payrolls is an actual listing of Gary residents that are performing. How I use this particular information is when contractors may say that there are no Gary residents in a particular trade, then we can refer back to our report to either support that or refute it, because we will have Gary residents noted from the certified payrolls that exist in those particular trades. And this is part of our monthly report that we submit. I will entertain any questions or comments that you may have at this time.
Tammy, I have one question. Just for the sake of transparency, can you create a category that would define emergency, not define emergency, but could you note emergency? Say, for example, when we go through and we look at METs, if you're just generally looking at the list, and there you go through, you see non-compliant, I can understand if it's an emergency, then you can't shop it out. I mean, if the pipe burst overnight, you have to have it repaired. So you would obviously be non-compliant, but can you define that in your report as an emergency?
Actually, it is. So when we go down to project name, we actually note it as an emergency sanitary sewer lining, emergency sewer repair. That's actually noted on that second page.
Are you asking for like a column with a checkbox if it's an emergency or not, rather than just a description?
I'm looking at page 2.
Yeah, so the very first one says
yeah.
Alex Met Sewer, and
All right.
then the project name is emergency sanitary sewer lining.
But you still have, you still have a number that's not defined as emergencies.
When you say number, I'm not clear what you mean because it says it's an emergency.
Well, when you...
As a project name.
Okay.
But I will say that METS has been working with us long enough that they could have Gary residents working with them and set for all of our projects. They have enough to have that. And we've had that conversation with Steve and I forget the brother or the son's name, relative that the projects are small enough. Normally the crew size is around 2 to 3 individuals. They may have a laborer, an operating engineer, and maybe 1 or 2 others. But given the volume and the longevity of which they've been working with us.
I understand, but only 4 of the 15 are defined as emergencies. And so the assumption is that the balance are non-emergencies.
But to have none?
Beg your pardon?
But to have no Gary residents?
I understand.
Even if it is an emergency, I just think that it's worth a conversation, as we have had with the METs, even currently, when I say currently in terms of coming back, having that conversation with the METs to identify individuals that he can have dispatched on our project, and just needs to have a further defined conversation with the MET so that he understands what our policies are.
So what I'm saying is the balance, the other 11 aren't emergencies.
I understand that.
No, I'm asking you. Because there's only 4 that's defined as emergencies.
Okay.
And the other 11 aren't emergencies. They are defined as emergencies, so you don't see them as being emergencies.
So they're not emergencies.
So they're not emergencies.
Correct.
Okay.
Not all of their projects are emergencies.
Okay.
Do they have a name listing of how many laborers that they may have in reserve, or they could reach out to at any time?
When you say they, are you meaning METs or?
METs. Mets?
Well, Mets has been reluctant to submit their certified payroll, so that would be hard for us to determine.
But they should have a list themselves of whom they might be able to contact at any emergency time. Do they have anything like that they could present to you to let you know that we do have this amount of individuals that we can get for an emergency?
Well, I concur with that statement and recommendation because they should. That's one of the statements that we mentioned at many pre-bids, that many of the contractors have been around long enough, and many of them have done work with either the Gary Sanitary District or throughout the city of Gary to have a list of Gary residents that they could call back for projects. When it comes to the collective bargaining agreement, it's called the special call rights. And so we remind contractors that they can call the hall and say, hey, I utilized John Jones 3 months ago, who is a Gary resident, regardless of where he falls on the list, and they could utilize those special callback rights to bring people onto our projects. We do remind contractors that they have that right and obligation. Mets needs to utilize the same. They should be able to provide to us at this point a list of Gary residents that they could dispatch on various different projects, whether it's emergency or non-emergency, that they could utilize.
Chairman, if I may offer comment, I recommend I'm going to notify Mets of their noncompliance. It's one thing to make efforts and not come up with the Gary residents, right, with documented efforts, but if this is the first time hearing they've been reluctant to submit certified payroll, that's a whole nother aspect of just noncompliance. I want to make them aware that they cannot bid on our projects any longer if they're not going to comply with that simple request.
Fair. Any further questions for compliance?
No.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Is there a designation other or beyond non-compliant? I mean, non-compliant could be maybe they just didn't have their paperwork submitted on time, or in this case where they actually are willfully not complying with the local hiring rule. Do we have a designation for these repeat offenders, sort of like chronic non-compliance, or do you have any other designation you use of the beyond non-compliant for repeat offenders?
In the past, there are two things that we have done. One is that we have informed contractors to not come on site until they documented their efforts to comply or came on site with better representation. The other thing that we have done is actually withheld payment. And in accordance with our policy, that is something that we have the authority to do, which is withholding payment.
And I guess I'm just addressing how you report it out, because I know this is a report that the mayor is going to be very interested in reviewing. How often do you submit this?
On a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis. So just a way to sort of make a difference between people that are non-compliant for just clerical reasons or timing reasons and people that are like willfully being non-compliant. Can we get a designation where it's reported out that has that distinction?
I'll work with
Yes.
Tammy to come up with a table that meets those requirements. I understand what you're looking for.
Thank you.
We could do that, and we have that information as well.
Any further questions for compliance? Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. And happy Black History Month.
Next on our agenda is discussion. That's discussion amongst members of the board. Is there any topic a board member wishes to discuss at this point?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move along to request to speak. Ms. Lee, are there any requests to speak?
No, sir.
With no request to speak, next on our agenda is adjournment. What is the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We are adjourned.
All righty.
I now call to order this meeting of the Gary Stormwater Management District, this regular meeting of the Board of Directors for Wednesday, February 19th, 2020. First thing on our agenda is roll call. Ms. Lee.
Director Tremel Rex.
Present.
Director Maurice Mabon.
Present.
Director Ola Morris.
Present.
Director Charles Jackson.
Present.
Attorney Tony Walker.
Present.
Executive Director, Daniel Vakari.
Present.
And Director of Administration, Vern White.
Present.
And that's the end of roll call.
Thank you. With 4 directors here, we have a quorum to do business. Next on the agenda is certification. I, Tramel Raggs, certify that prior to this meeting, an executive session was held, and that there was nothing discussed except the items indicated on the executive session notice posted in compliance with Indiana Code 5-14-1.5. Also, no final decisions were made during that executive session in compliance with the same statute. If there is any director that dissents this certification, they may do so now. Hearing none, we will move along to the minutes. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the executive session and regular meeting minutes of February 3rd, 2020.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Director Jackson.
Yes.
Director Morris.
Yes.
Director Mabon.
Yes.
Director Raggs.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, the minutes have been approved. Next, we will move along the agenda to new business. And for new business, we'll turn it over to Executive Director, Mr. Daniel Vakari.
Thank you, Chairman. There's only one item of new business, and that is payroll, and I'd like to have Vern White present that to you.
Thank you, Director. Item 2A, a motion to approve GSWMD's payroll earnings for period ending January 6, 2020 through January 19, 2020, in the amount of $9,449.23. I recommend approval as stated in the motion.
You have heard the overview and recommendation with regard to 2A. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to move as approval, said approval in the motion, Mr. Chair.
Second that, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Director Jackson.
Yes.
Director Morris.
Yes.
Director Mabon.
Yes.
Director Raggs.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 2A has been approved.
That completes today's stormwater and business items.
Thank you. Moving along our agenda, next we come to claims, and for claims, I'll turn it back over to the Director of Administration, Ms. Vern White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, item 3A, GSWMD claims numbers 44 through 62 in the amount of $1,904,090.15. I recommend approval and ratification of today's stormwater claims.
You've heard the overview and recommendation with regard to approval and ratification of 3A. What is the pleasure of the board?
So move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Lee.
Director Jackson.
Yes.
Director Morris.
Yes.
Director Mabon.
Yes.
Director Raggs.
Yes.
The vote is 4 ayes, 0 noes.
With 4 ayes and 0 noes, 3A has been approved.
That completes today's claims items for the Gary Stormwater Management District.
Thank you. Moving along our agenda, next we come to information updates, and our first information update will be from our MS4 coordinator, Ms. Brenda Scott Henry.
Good afternoon. You should have received a copy of our monthly report in your board package for your review. Just only a few things I want to mention to you in the board packet. One, got a report from collections, and we'll have a sweeping schedule for you, street sweeping schedule for you at our next MS4 team meeting, which will be March 9th, and we'll include that information in your board packet at that time. So be looking forward for the street sweeping schedule. I want to thank the Gary NAACP for working with us working with them on their Climate Justice and Resilient Summit that was held on February 8th at Trinity United Church. Thank you, Ms. Morris, for participating, and I hope you had a great learning experience in hearing how our young folks are really vocal, using their voice to prepare for climate resilience, whether that's climate change, however you want to term it. But we know that we are experiencing climate issues, and I'm glad to see that we have a young generation who's willing to voice their opinion about that and take action. And then I also want to thank the Gary Fire Department, who we always kind of nudge a little bit due to Mr. Jackson's belief in having municipal employees have their CPR certification. So last year, we certified over 100 city employees. I will get the update for you to find out how many city employees registered for the CPR training. On Friday, February 14th, we held the Love Your Block press conference, where we now have requests for proposals available. If you contact the Department of Constituent Services, that's Shanita Starks, and there are some AmeriCorps Vistas there that are helping us to issue out those requests for proposals. But we are looking for block clubs or community organizations who have come together and would like to do a beautification project in their neighborhood. The Gary Stormwater Management District supplies native plants for those activities, and we also help with designing their garden. This is an effort to reduce blight, manage stormwater, as well as reduce pollution in the city. And we are working with our communications department in the city to for our upcoming events. One, the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day is scheduled for April 25th, and we're almost in March already. So I know that we need to start getting that material out, marketing materials out. So we're working with Mike Gonzalez in order to do that. And so we ask also for your support in terms of helping to spread the word about our household hazardous waste collection event. And lastly, I just want to thank Dan Bakari for his efforts in getting our space ready for us here at the Sanitary District. So Environmental Affairs will be moving to this location the week of February 24th. We will start our relocating. So thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. We look forward to having you.
Okay. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. All right.
Any questions for the MS4 coordinator? All right, thank you. Our next information update will be from American Structure Point, and that will come from Mr. Chris Murphy.
Good afternoon, Directors. Chris Murphy with Structure Point. Brief report today. We are moving ahead on our two top priority design projects. The first being Lake Street Phase 2, which moves on from the Phase 1, heading northward towards the lake to prepare bid documents for a May letting this year. So construction will be completed through the summer of this year to complete that project. The second project we're working on very proactively to prepare documents for bidding is the 13th Avenue Sewer Replacement Project, utilizing Corps of Engineers Section 219 funding for this year. The Corps of Engineers has asked us to have bid documents prepared by the end of June for letting, so that they can provide the funding for that project in their fiscal year for construction to start this summer. Also want to note that I have with me today Ken Martin, who is our project manager for the construction out at Lake Street. As you've heard previously reported, construction is pretty slow out there right now during the winter months, and looking forward to getting things started with a schedule of work and outstanding work to be finished to be completed by the Phase 1 contractor early this spring. So if you have any specific questions for Ken on construction at Lake Street, let me know, and Ken can respond to that. If you have any further questions for me, let me know.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy?
Got off easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Directors.
Our next information update will come from Robinson Engineering, and that will come from Mr. Ron Smith.
Good afternoon, Directors. Ron Smith with Robinson Engineering. Just a couple updates for you. The Warren Street feasibility study from Lake Shore to Oak. We were directed by Executive Director Dan Vicari to update the cost estimates and then also the proposed location for where the service lines will tie into the proposed new sanitary sewer main, so that way the director and his staff can go out and meet with some of the residents and get them idea of the location and also cost for improvements. We are still moving forward with the design for the Sixth Place project. That is from Lake Street to Howard and from Howard to Miller Avenue. We're nearing a 75% completion, and we'll be meeting with the Executive Director, Dan Vicari, and his staff to go over that design so that way we can get their input and to make sure that the roadway profile, cross-sections, and the drainage meets or exceeds their expectations. So that's all I have this afternoon, and I will entertain any questions that the directors may have.
Any questions from the board for Robinson Engineering?
Thank you very much.
All right, moving along our agenda, next we come to discussion, and as discussion amongst members of the board. Is there any topic a board member wishes to discuss at this point?
Yeah, in your inserts, could you remove those and give them to Mrs. Scott Henry before you leave, please?
Oh, we're ready. Is there any other topic a board member wishes to discuss at this time? Hearing none, next we move along to requests to speak. Ms. Lee, are there any requests to speak?
No, sir.
With no requests to speak, next on our agenda is adjournment. What is the pleasure of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.